Swayamupagalamayam dadati swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sadhana Raghunavitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvabhutanam Parishan Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Tamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanabhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. So today, ladies and gentlemen, dear devotees, we will be covering text 35, and the translation for text 35 is, "And yet others say that you appeared for the sake of rejuvenating the devotional service of hearing, remembering, worshipping, and so on, in order that the conditioned souls suffering from material pangs might take advantage and gain liberation." Purport by His Divine Grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Lord asserts that he appears in every millennium just to re-establish the way of religion. The way of religion is made by the Supreme Lord, and no one can manufacture a new path of religion, as is the fashion for certain ambitious persons. The factual way of religion is to accept the Lord as the supreme authority.
You can be on it if you want to.
And thus, could I, Jyoti Mataji, if you've got the rights, please, could you just unmute, could you just mute everybody, please, if it's okay?
Yes, Mataji, I've just done it.
Thank you so much. So the factual way of religion is to accept the Lord as the supreme authority and thus render service unto him with spontaneous love. A living being cannot help but render service because he is constitutionally made for that purpose. The only function of a living being is to render service to the Lord. The Lord is great and living beings are subordinate to him. Therefore, the duty of the living being is to serve him only. Unfortunately, the illusioned living beings, out of misunderstanding only, become servants of the senses of material desire. This desire is called avidya, or nescience, and out of such desire, the living beings make different plans for material enjoyment, centered about a perverted sex life. He therefore becomes entangled in the chain of birth and death by transmigrating into different bodies, on different planets, and under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Unless, therefore, one is beyond the boundaries of this nescience, one cannot get free from the threefold miseries of material life. That is the law of nature. The Lord, however, out of his causeless mercy, because he is more merciful to the suffering beings, living beings, than he can expect. Let me just repeat that again. The Lord, however, out of his causeless mercy, because he is more merciful to the living beings than they can expect, appears before them and renovates the principle of devotional service comprised of hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, praying, cooperating, and surrendering to him. Adoption of these above-mentioned items, or any one of them, can help the conditioned soul get out of the tangle of nescience and thus become liberated from all material sufferings and created by the living beings, illusioned by the external energy. This particular type of mercy is bestowed upon the living being by the Lord in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, dear devotees, so far we have been reading that after the Battle of Kurukshetra, the Pandavas and Krishna deliver Ganga water to their relatives, and the relatives that were slain in the battle. And Krishna asked Yudhishthira to undertake 3 Ashwamedha yagyas. And then the Lord himself begins to depart from for Dwarka when Uttara obviously approaches him, and she prays to the Lord saying, look, this Brahmastra is after me. You know, I don't mind if you don't save me, but please save my unborn child, who was the last of the living of the relatives of the Pandavas. So the Lord, with his Sudarshan Chakra, protects Uttara and actually protects the, he expands as the super soul, the Paramatma within Uttara's heart and within Parikshit Maharaj's heart. And then he covers the baby and protects the baby, and then obviously releasing his Sudarshan Chakra, he averts the missile or whatever it was. Now, as a grandmother, and if any of you are grandparents, you will know that the love switch that comes on for your grandchildren is totally different even to having your own children. That kind of love is so great. And you know, the Pandavas are really grateful. Mother Kunti is very grateful, and she approaches the Lord with the Pandavas and Draupadi, offering prayers. And here, what we've been reading time and time again is the glorification of her prayers, saying that just trying to use our senses, we cannot actually understand the Supreme Lord, because he is beyond sense perception. She also says she wonders how herself as a woman can even know the Lord, and so she begins to recall with gratitude all the times that the Lord has been protecting them and continues to protect them. And she says that, you know, calamities actually, they're welcome because they help a devotee to remember Lord Krishna, because this material world is designed for suffering, and by remembering the Lord, we understand that there's nobody else in this world that we can actually really take shelter. There's no material relationship that we can take shelter of that even is to the extent that our relationship with Lord Krishna is just unfathomable. But because we're in the Vidya, we're illusioned, and we're always aspiring to serve our senses. And of course, when we're serving our senses, we're then disconnected from the Lord. And when we're disconnected from the Lord, then we begin to make plans for material enjoyment. And so the more plans we make, the more we get entangled in material life, and then we have birth, death, old age, disease, and death. This is what Srila Prabhupada is saying, that we enter into nescience. Why? Because we, you know, they focus on perverted sex life. So when Srila Prabhupada says, if we are entangled in the chain of birth and death, what is not guaranteed is the types of bodies we get. You know, we don't know how many millions of lifetimes we've had in different bodies on different planets, and they're always under the direction of the Lord. So unless one can transcend the boundary of nescience, Srila Prabhupada says we can't get free from the threefold miseries of material life. So that's the law of nature. So how do we get over the boundaries of nescience? How do we become free from the threefold miseries of material life? Would people like to post on chat what you think helps us to transcend? Because it'd be really great to hear from yourselves where you think, what will help us transcend material nature, or the modes, or avidya, or ignorance.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
So we need to get knowledge. We need to overcome avidya. First, when we get knowledge, so how do we get knowledge? First, we have to associate. We associate with devotees. Then we take a guru, because we know the process. We read the Bhagavad Gita. And from there, slowly, we climb the ladder. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Indireka Mataji. What about the rest of you? I mean, if you don't want to speak, please just post it on the chat. So Krishnavani Mataji is saying by taking up chanting Mahamantra and reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Thank you, Krishnavani Mataji. Shakshi Mataji is saying the same, chanting and reading Srila Prabhupada's books. What about the rest of you? Because it'd be lovely to hear from other devotees on here. And if you're shy to speak up, then at least post something on the chat. What inspires you most? Please post something, because I think it would be really lovely to have an interactive focus on devotional service and have full faith in Krishna. Thank you, Bhagavati Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I think firstly we should have Shraddha and take shelter of the spiritual master, and who will give us the knowledge, transcendental knowledge that will take us to Krishna and chant Hare Krishna mantra and all those devotions. Service to Krishna.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So you're saying spiritual master?
Yes, first spiritual master, pure devotee of the Lord. Then we associate with the other devotees.
And who is speaking, Mataji?
Skanta.
Thank you so much. Let's see, we've got some people. Arpita is saying by focusing on Krishna consciousness. Jyoti is saying listening to Kirtan and attending temple and reading. We've got Krishna Hare Hare. Try to engage in full devotional service. Indira is saying association with devotees. Mitali is saying spend more time with devotees and chanting. Rita, you're saying association with Hare Krishna devotees and chant the Maha Mantra, distribute books. That's wonderful. Induleka Mataji, you've got your hand up. What would you like to say?
Yes, Mataji. So you just talk about the 9 processes. First is Shravanam. So first we have to listen, and then we do Kirtanam. So we have to have association first, and then we listen, and then we can go further.
Yes, and do you know who are the famous devotees linked to Shravanam Kirtanam? Does anybody know?
Is it Prahlad Maharaj?
Yeah. Prahlad Maharaj.
Prahlad
Yes.
Maharaj, yeah.
And
Dhruv Maharaj.
what was that? No, just stop there for a minute. So if you can post it on the chat, or you can say it, please tell us the Mahajan and what they were famous for and how they became liberated through one of each of those practices. So what was, tell us, Prahlad Maharaj, what was he famous for?
For his faith in the Lord.
He had faith, okay.
He had full faith in the Lord. That is Prahlad Maharaj.
Okay. What about
Kirtanam.
Janak Maharaj?
They were all devotee of the Lord in
devotee.
first place. Yes, they were true Vaishnavas and they were devotee of the Lord.
Thank you, Bhagavati Mataji. Suresh Bhai, you've got your hand up. What would you like to say?
I think there's a confusion here between the 9 angs of bhakti and the 9 processes of bhakti. What you're talking about is the 9 processes of devotional service. Actually, what you probably should be referring to is the 9 stages of bhakti, which is Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha, Nivritti.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're
Nishta,
preempting what I'm
Ruchi.
thinking, but that's not the case, Suresh Bhai. I actually want to link it to the Mahajans.
Okay, because you said, well, how do we develop stages of bhakti? And that is how you develop according to Nectar of Devotion.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is the 9 processes of devotional
Yes.
service, which
Yeah.
are equally, any one of those can
Yeah.
be equally potent.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for the correction. I always appreciate it.
Mhm.
Krishangi Mataji, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that you have to get detached from material things to advance spiritually.
Okay.
Yeah, and getting, detached from your children, all material comforts, simplify your life,
And coming back to what Indulekha Mataji said, that you really need knowledge. Without knowledge, do you think it's easy for people to detach?
No, even if you got knowledge, people find it difficult.
Yeah.
So you have to get, once you got the knowledge, then you have to start slowly, getting detached from material comforts, maybe eventually getting detached from your children, getting more and more, then you can get more attached to Krishna,
Yeah.
spend more time chanting, reading, and doing service for Krishna. That you can only do if you are not so much attached to material comforts and children and, or social life and things like that,
Yes, and this is what Kunti Devi is praying for, that she's so grateful that the Lord has protected her grandchild, has always protected them. But at the same time, she's now asking for detachment.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
From her family. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, she's a good example. Because she had everything, so she wants to get detached now from the family,
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Salish Bhai, did you have anything to add? You've got your hand up, Prabhu.
Apologies, no, that was from before. Apologies.
That's okay. No worries. Okay. So let me just come back to what Srila Prabhupada is saying. Just towards the end, Srila Prabhupada has something to tell us. So the Lord, however, out of his causeless mercy, because he's more merciful than the living beings, then they can actually expect. So what do you think that means when Srila Prabhupada is telling us that the Lord, however, out of his causeless mercy, because he's more merciful to the suffering living beings than they can expect? What does that tell us about the Lord?
Sometimes it happens that when we deserve more, we get less like a suffering. Like if we are devotee of the Lord, even if we get suffering, it's not to that extent, and we get it less, right? So we thank the Lord. It could have been worse. The Lord is merciful in this sense. Also, He's merciful when He desires that somebody comes to him. Unless until he desires, nobody can reach to him. Like even meeting a devotee, many people meet devotees on the road, but how many take it seriously? How many take Prabhupada's book seriously? And unless the Lord wants it, unless he sanctions it, nobody can start reading his book. Some people may have bought Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and all, but it's on the shelf. Unless the Lord inspires someone from within inside. I don't know, Mataji, this is my understanding, sorry.
Thank you, thank you. So then Srila Prabhupada says that the Lord appears before them and renovates the principles of devotional service comprised of hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, praying, cooperating, and surrendering unto him. So what we can also understand is that the Lord, out of his causeless mercy, he gives these opportunities to us, i.e. hearing about him, chanting about him, remembering about him, serving him. Why? Because the Lord comes time and time again, so we understand about his form, his qualities, his pastimes. Again, linking it to the Mahajans, those who are serving, worshipping, praying, cooperating, surrendering unto him. And here then Srila Prabhupada says that adoption of these above mentioned items, or any one of them, so it doesn't have to be all of them, but even any one of them can perfect us or help the conditioned soul to get out of the tangle of nescience. So I have a question for you, and please just put it on the chat. Which one of these principles of devotional service comes easy to you, or you have a preference to? Is it hearing? Is it chanting? Is it remembering? Is it serving? Is it worshipping? Is it praying? Is it cooperating? Or is it surrendering?
For me, it's chanting, Mataji.
Which one?
Chanting.
Chanting.
The easiest one, yeah.
Okay, and why do you find chanting easier than any of the other ones? Which is the most difficult for you?
No, it's the all are okay, like hearing and others, worshipping, everything. But I think the chanting is the more easiest one for me.
It's the most easiest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we can't go to temple. Suppose we are living away from temple, can't go there and can't take darshan, and whatever we do at home, worshipping, remembering everything. But still, like Prabhupada said, you must chant the holy name. That's the most important.
So
easiest way you can chant anytime, anywhere.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So just asking this question to the rest of you, please, can you post on the chat which one do you feel inspired by? Just post it on the chat, please. Chanting and listening to Kirtan, hearing and chanting, hearing, interesting, lots of people for hearing, chanting. Ashwini Mataji saying chanting, Mitali saying hearing. Of course, when we're chanting the holy name, we're hearing and chanting. Rita is saying listening to Kirtan. That's what you find. Okay. Serving. So, Suraj Ben, tell us more about serving. Why is that inspirational for you?
Because you associate with devotees.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think it helps when you serve somebody. It sort of gives you humbleness. as well. And for me, it gives me a good feeling as well that I'm doing a duty.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you. And so when you're saying you're serving, what you're saying is that in the association of the devotees, you feel inspired.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Hare
So
Krishna.
we've got a comment here. Sorry, did you want to finish, Sarojbin? Sarojbin?
That's fine. That's fine. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you. So we've also got a comment here, but that was different yuga, not possible today, or it's very difficult. So chanting and hearing is recommended for this yuga. Yeah, that is a point. But you know, we all have our personal engagement. Of course, the chanting of the Mahamantra is, you know, the Sankirtan Yajna is the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says is the only way. But also associate, you know, Harinam, Sadhu Sangha, and Jivadoya to be. These are all aspects by serving. By being compassionate, that we actually, our heart softens. So if we think that if I just chant and I just hear and I don't have to work on myself, then we can actually, maybe it might take a lot longer for us to actually advance spiritually. I don't know if anyone wants to say something about that. Krishangi Mataji, do you want to say something? Because I know you've been in Krishna consciousness for a very long time. Do you think that just chanting and hearing is enough? Or can we do it perfectly? What else do we need to do?
I think you need to read as well, unless you got knowledge.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I know people, there are examples of people who just by chanting, they've done it. But then you have to have that sort of purity and detachment from material things, then only you can do it. Otherwise, you need even knowledge to advance.
Okay.
Because knowledge guides you, you know, when you read and that you read that you should do this, then you realize okay, you're doing things wrongly.
Yeah. And when you say knowledge, do you mean like being in a class, or do you mean private study or private reading?
No, I think private reading, both class and private reading, both. You can pick up a lot from classes, but I think even Prabhupada said you should read every day, you know, Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, he says 1 hour, but most people don't find that sort of time, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I read a chapter, you know, just translation every day. But that if I had to, you know, do like he says 1 hour, it's a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there, for people out there who are reluctant readers, does anyone have any recommendations? Or
I mean, they can listen to classes. Some people like to listen, not read.
yeah, but why do you think Srila Prabhupada said that everybody should be reading his books?
Because he said he'll learn from my books. Everything's in my books, you know, to advance spiritually. That's what he said, you know. And he said, whatever you need to know about Krishna's passion, everything is there. You'll learn from my books, whatever you need to do to advance spiritually.
Yeah.
And get closer to Krishna by knowing about his activities, his, you know, pastimes.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Sarojbin, you're saying that we've got a question as well. It's, before we go to Sarojbin, what's the meaning of Jivadoya? It's compassion. Jivadoya means compassion for other living beings. It's not so much material compassion, but it's compassion in terms of, I think somebody made a comment earlier, to share Krishna consciousness. So you know, the greatest act of mercy or compassion is to actually, you know, enable others to access Krishna consciousness. So that's what, one of the things that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's why we're in a preaching mission, because we, yes, we can be liberated by these processes. However, it's very, very important to remember that on the onset of Kali Yuga, which we're sort of 5,000 years in, that the only way forward is, of course, focusing on our spiritual life and having that purity, but to be able to also share Krishna consciousness. So, Sarashwin, you're saying reading and hearing is good, but needs to be put into practice. What have you learned? What do you mean by that, Sarashwin? Could you clarify that, please?
I mean, we have lots of lessons. Krishna gives us lots of lessons in the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all very well learning about them. But if you don't put them into practice, what good is it? And also sharing it as well.
What do you think is the most difficult thing to put into practice?
I mean, Krishna, in chapter 12, Krishna says being kind to everybody, being compassionate, and not to put anybody into difficulty.
Right.
Yeah, but in the
The
material
main,
world, you find lots of people, yeah, they know about it, but they don't put it into practice.
So this is where Srila Prabhupada often talks about the mad elephant. You know, sometimes, you know, we're chanting and everything, but we also creating aparadh. So yes, you're absolutely right. We have to be very conscious. That's why we say Krishna consciousness. We have to be conscious of Krishna. But here, Srila Prabhupada tells us in this purport that unless, if we're in the modes of ignorance, if we're engaging in those modes, then the Lord will be hidden to us. We won't really see the Lord. So yes, you're right. We have to be reflecting all the time. And I think what Krishnangi Mataji was saying was that when we're reading, we're having that private association with the Lord. There's almost like a silent process of synthesizing what we're reading. And actually, because the Lord is ultimately the sanctioner, and he gives us remembrance and forgetfulness and understanding just by reading Srila Prabhupada's books, which is recommended for us. You know, we have to do reading and we have to do chanting, hearing and chanting. But the process of reading is, again, equally important, because, you know, when we're reading about the Lord's form, his pastimes, his qualities, the Lord gives us more mercy and revelation in that than we can even imagine. There's a comment here. Engage in devotional service, but try to do what one is doing with Krishna in the mind to keep mind occupied such that it doesn't get diverted to the mundane. Thank you for that. Bhagati Mataji, you're saying not to be envious. Could you, how is that, could you explain that to us in terms of envy and how it's difficult for us to hear or chant or surrender or remember the Lord or serve?
okay, to not to be envious is when you see someone is progressing well or doing something better, you should encourage them, but you should not be envious of that, oh, I can do better than them, you know, or try to put them down. So you have to be in that position to really encourage people. So you have to be compassionate, you should be humble, and you should be willing to help, even though, you know, you feel the other person is doing well. It does not mean that you are not doing well. If you try your best to be really full faith in Krishna and doing your sadhanas very well, you will be going forward into that. So the envious means you should not be envious of anybody. Your ego has to be left there, that, oh, I'm better than her, or try to compare her with something. But sometimes, you know, people are envious because they think, oh, she's doing better than me, so Why is she like that? Or I can do better. Or you try to pull them down, and that's wrong. That's wrong.
Thank you for your comment, Bhagavati Mataji. And I suppose we're all here in this material world because we are all envious, and we are envious. We have been envious of Krishna first and foremost, which is why we've left the spiritual world. This is why we're disconnected from Krishna. What is the remedy for envy? Does anybody know? And I think we have to connect this with what Bhagavati Mataji is saying in terms of, you know, our ability to be able to hear, to chant, to remember, to serve, to worship, to pray. And I think what's also important was what Sarojben said, that unless you're deeply reflecting within yourself, it's very hard to progress. So sometimes we may be hearing and chanting, which is absolutely the Yuga Dharma. But sometimes our chanting isn't very great. So by going within, we can usually, unless we're absolutely delusional, we can usually reflect within our own heart, you know, that there's something I did. Because through aprad, anarthas, envy, lust, being attached to things, wanting things coming our way, lust, anger, you know, how many times have I been angry this week? Greed, you know, wanting more than than I deserve. These demonic tendencies, they all operate under the modes, have a big impact on our progress, to be able to, as Prabhupada says, that, you know, the mercy that has been bestowed upon us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You know, actually, when we think about it, the principles of devotional service comprise of hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, praying, cooperating, surrendering. An adoption of these. I suppose the question we have to ask ourselves is, you know, how am I serving the Lord and how am I remembering the Lord? Does anybody have tips in terms of how to constantly serve the Lord and remember the Lord? Bhaktiben? Anybody who hasn't spoken yet? Any ideas? How to always remember the Lord and how to always serve the Lord?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
So I think most of the devotees, they do that in the morning. As soon as we wake up, we thank the Lord, we had a good night, and then we have to like pray to Dharti Mata, Bhumi Devi, that we're going to step on her. This is another thing. Then we have shower. Then we recite the mantra like Gangechu Jamuna Chaiva. That is also we are constantly reminding. And then we go in the deity room. We will greet the deities. We'll wake them up. We will do our Gayatri, and that is constant. Then we will prepare. We do the Aarti. Then we will offer the bhogas, and then again we will thank the Lord. Another mantra. Mantrahinam, Kriyahinam, we are thanking the Lord. And then after that, we'll have a little break in between while we are having our breakfast. Our audio is on, we're listening constantly. And then we have to prepare the bhoga for the lunch time. And in this way, we constantly, and then during the day, we keep our chanting. Before, in the morning also, we do some chanting. If we haven't completed, we catch up during the day. And then in the evening, it's the same thing. It's ongoing. And we have classes. We are sometimes giving classes, we have to prepare for them, we are listening to other classes. So, and this is the beauty of technology and the headphone, even if we're in the kitchen among our dishes and our vent or whatever is going on, we are listening. So at night before going, we read, or we discuss with friends, or things like that. So in this way, this is my way of thinking. We keep Krishna in the center all the time.
Thank you very much for that share. So what you're saying, you've given us an illustration of your day and how you engage in Krishna. So Suraj Ben is saying, whatever you do, do it for Krishna. Bhagavati is saying, have gratitude. Jyoti is saying, by keeping Krishna in mind all the time and appreciating everything that we have in all situations. So why is it so hard then, if we know all of this, that we can be grateful, that we know we have to try and remember Krishna, or with the saying, fixing our mind on Krishna consciousness, keeping Krishna at the center. But how do we do that? Do you think we can do that all the time, Sunita?
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. My understanding is offering our results of our activities to Krishna, like giving up the desire of fruit and offering everything what we do in daily life to Krishna.
How would that pan out, Sunita, for an ordinary person?
Yeah, but this is we can try, like we constantly we do our, like other everyone else has said, like doing activities, thinking of Krishna, and just carry on doing our duties, and in deep down just praying and like surrendering onto Krishna, like full surrender, like, look, whatever is happening is your wish, and whatever will happen is your wish. I think it will make it easy to remember him all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. You're all telling me this, but give me a practical example. Because Bhagavati Mataji is saying, Maya is so strong that we have to make our sadhana strong without offenses. So my question is, how can you keep Krishna at the center every moment and every day and in every situation?
So, like, if negative things happened, like, and then we just have to just say, okay, maybe Krishna is one of the plans. Maybe better things will come up in next time. So by that, making ourselves positive in our devotional life, it makes it easy for us to move on.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And progress as well. Like, we progress better if we don't have negative thoughts about negative things happening.
So here Srila Prabhupada is telling us in the purport that when we are in the modes, unless we are fully in Suddha Sattva, in complete pure goodness, it's almost impossible to remember Krishna. Or if we're in the mode of goodness, maybe we'll have moments where we'll remember Krishna. But if in the mode of passion, then often we think, because you're just engaging with the mind and the false ego. And of course, when you're in pure goodness, the Lord is always ever increasing. The Lord is ever new. The Lord is ever revealing. But when we're in the modes, there's always degradation. So we can see that during the day. We can see that in, like you said, to be tolerant, but it only takes 1,000 parts of a second. The false ego's already stepped in and it's already got an answer.
Yeah, that happens. That's when we try, like, to bring ourselves into the mode of goodness by associating with Srila Prabhupada, by listening, or like chanting loudly, or maybe I chant Nrsingadev prayers, because we know when we are in the mode of passion, we know deep down, like we know that's happening, and we try to find a shelter of senior devotees and Srila Prabhupada, and then try to bring ourselves into the mode of goodness. But it's like associating with the devotees, sharing if something's bothering us, and sharing with the senior devotees or devotee friends. They can help you. Or praying to deities, praying to Srila Prabhupada. I'm sure everyone goes through this, and they just find a way out through Srila Prabhupada's family. And
Thank you. Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Hare Krishna.
I want to ask this question, and it really takes somebody very courageous and brave to answer it, which is, in the past, what has got in the way of your chanting? Because here the Lord causes mercy through his mercy to help us overcome our suffering. The Lord, gives us these processes or principles of hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, praying, cooperating, surrendering. What in the past has got in the way of your ability to be able to surrender, hear, read, chant? Or you think that could get in the way?
So you're talking of the past, Mataji. So the young mothers who have to raise children and then doing all these at the same time, which is very difficult, right?
Yes, it's interesting you say that in the Mataji, because at the same time, Jyotiben's fired up a message. I think it's family duties for me. So Jyotiben, expand a bit on that, because both you and Indulekha Mataji are saying that. So what gets in the way in terms of family duties?
I think Mataji is just like in the previously, now I've settled myself and I've literally properly organized. I'm a little bit organized now. But in the past, every time I sat down with my, so I do a few rounds in the morning, early morning, and then the rest of my rounds, every time I sit down in the evening, something comes up. Either someone calls me, either I'm needed in the kitchen, either phone rings or work or emails, something comes up all the time. And it used to be and I used to think that, it's only 16 rounds that I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to do anything great. I've done half is left. Why is this happening every time? Then I tried to change my timings, and I tried to reorganize my, my lifestyle and everything. So nowadays it works a little bit, but it used to be the family all the time, or this, emails, work, material life. I don't know why. And I used to think maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Maybe my Krishna is not happy with me. I don't know what wrong I'm doing. But anyway, somehow it's worked better now. But it was always like family and children and stuff. Yeah.
So Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that better you do your duty imperfectly than to do somebody else's duty perfectly. So part of doing your duty is also the ability to be able to recognize and advance in Krishna consciousness, because it means that you don't run away from it, because family duties is something we can't get away from. So sometimes we're so ambitious and we want to do so much, but if we neglect the soul and the devotees or the Lord within the heart of other family members, then we're not really doing our duty. So we often think that family duties get in the way. But here Krishna is telling us, no matter what, stick with it, because through that you experience perfection.
Yes, Mataji, in Bhagavad Gita, he is instructing Arjuna, do your dharma. So you should do our dharma, but sometimes it's difficult, but still we should strive to reach perfection.
Yeah.
So when I'm telling about my day, now I am old, I'm retired, so I'm free. young mothers cannot see the same thing. It will be difficult for them.
Yes, and I think that's the other thing, isn't it? That and this is why when you get to the Vanapras state of life, that's often the time where you've almost finished your family duties, or you would have finished your family duties. That's the point where you have to do less and you can engage, as you said, Indulekha Mataji, from waking up in the morning to serving Krishna, worshipping Krishna, hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna. It's, sometimes it's not how much you do, it's with the right intention. That Krishna, I'm going to serve you, this family that you've given me, that you've gifted me, I'm going to serve you through them. So it's really about our state of mind, because sometimes we think our advancing in Krishna consciousness is doing, our family duties or whatever situation we're in is an impediment. And that's what Krishna is actually telling us in the Bhagavad Gita, that no, just do your duty, and better you do it imperfectly than to do somebody else's duty perfectly. So, in the past, people have, young parents have thought, no, I need to get this done, I need to get that done. My family is in the way, or my children are in the way, or my duties are in the way. But the Lord absolutely advises us that we must do our dharma, because if we don't, then, as Sarojban said, we disturb others, we put others into difficulty. If there was one thing that you'd really like to develop, what would it be? Would it be praying, cooperating, surrendering, worshipping? Anyone would like to share what you would like to develop? I mean, I don't know where all of you are, but some of you may want to be aspiring to do deity worship. And I don't mean deity worship at the manor, but I also mean at home. Pushpavan, you wanted to say something? Pushpavan? Okay, maybe Pushpavan will come back. Do you just type it on the chat, please? Tell us what you'd like to go away thinking about in terms of developing more. So Krishnangi Mataji, next week you've got a really important week. What is the one thing that you're going to focus on even more? I don't know if Krishnangi Mataji.
How do you mean?
I'm just saying, in terms of worshipping, praying, cooperating, surrendering, serving, if there was one thing that you could work on in the future, which one would it be? Well, which one will give you lots of strength?
It's very difficult to say, because all are important, but maybe surrendering is very difficult to surrender to somebody, isn't it? Eventually we have to surrender to Krishna, then we'll get closer to him.
So surrendering, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Sudhita, you've said improving your chanting. Anyone got tips on improving chanting? I can share one with you, or a couple. Waking up at Brahma Muhurat after 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock, reading the 10 offenses, reading the Shikshashtaka, which is what Krishnangi Mataji used to recommend to us when I was in her Sangha. Do you want to share something about improving chanting?
Well, Prabhupada said, I was listening to a class from Prabhupada, and he was saying, when you chant, you have to concentrate on each word, like Hare Krishna, and continuously, like it should be clearly going, you can clearly hear the word. Sometimes when you chant, your mind is somewhere else when you're chanting, But he said you have to concentrate on each and every word of your chanting mantra, And then as you do, if you can do even one round that properly, it'll be good. Shiva Maharaj says same thing, that, next tomorrow morning when you start chanting, when you chant, see how far you can concentrate, on each beat. And you'll find that after a few beats, your mind will start wandering. So concentration is very important on chanting, that every, mantra goes in your head.
Thank you. Thank you. And so with concentration then, Krishnagi Mataji, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, he said, you beat your mind
With the shoes, yeah.
a stick in the morning and a shoe
And shoes in the at night, yeah.
What does he really mean? Does anybody know here what he means about that?
I think it means being firm, about, not thinking of anything else, but, just concentrate, like Prabhupada said, on words, you're saying.
Thank you. It's nearly 9 o'clock, dear devotees. Thank you so much for your association and your time today. Just to recap, that Srila Prabhupada says that when we adopt any one of these methods of chanting, remembering, serving, worshiping, hearing, praying, cooperating, and surrendering, that these are the aspects, by adopting them, these items, that the conditioned soul can get out of the tanglement of nescience. Thank you so much. Indulekha Mataji, if everybody, if any of you want to go, please do. We'll just stop for Indulekha Mataji's question.
Hare Krishna Mataji, it's not a question, it's just a realization.
Yeah,
so
sure.
when we say control the mind, it's very difficult. Like if we think about Arjuna 5,000 years ago, he's saying he will be able to control the mind, rather controlling the mind, that the wind that is mind. So what about us? Now, one thing that I have experienced, so while chanting, if we can chant loud enough that we can hear ourselves, and then like take it from the mouth to the ear and from the ear to the heart. So we make sure that we are able to do that, but the mind still wanders. So we should be like conscious to bring it back. But this is my method of chanting. I make sure I chant loud enough that I can hear myself. That means I'm listening to my chanting, not hearing, listening to my chanting. And then I make sure that, yes, but sometimes when my mind just goes away, I bring it back. So I don't know if it can help.
Thank you very much. And one of the things that, if any of you, I'm sure many of you can give this guidance, but good chanting starts the night before, in terms of reading, what you read before you go to bed, how you prepare your mindset, what you're thinking of before you fall asleep, because it will actually also tell you as you wake up in the morning what your thoughts are. So actually preparing the night before and actually observing, and actually this, as soon as we get up, by showering and then getting straight on with the chanting, and I think Saraj brought this point up, that if we can do that, our mind is still, it's still not as active, because we're sort of more on the subconscious level. That can really, really help with chanting. I know that some people can't fit in all 16 rounds first thing in the morning, but if you can, and one way you can get really good chanting, as like Mataji said, by hearing what we're, by chanting clearly, but actually hearing it, that this is one particular way of helping ourselves in the chanting process, but also reading. As soon as we wake up in the morning, read a bit of Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, and then get into chanting. And of course, the mind, when the thoughts come, as Arjuna said, it's more difficult to control than the wind. Then we have to treat the mind like another living entity, because the mind is always making plans. The mind is always knows better. Then the mind always has an inflated sense of self. The mind is always scorning. The mind is always agitated, dissatisfied. And it's only when you start chanting, all these thoughts that come, the only way we can control them is to treat it like a different living entity. And like Krishnangi Mataji said, be very firm that you're not going to engage with it. So if a thought comes through or a process comes through, watch it, observe it, but don't engage with it. And on that note, well, it's 9 o'clock, so thank you so much for your patience. I sincerely beg your forgiveness for any errors or mistakes, and I hope that you will see just the endeavor and asking for the dust of your lotus feet. Good night. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Vaishnavibhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Wonderful.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a very lovely class, Nandarani.
Thank you.
Wonderful interactive class, Mataji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna. Hare Bol.
Thank you, Mataji. Really wonderful class.
Thank you so much, Mataji.